How you doing, guys? So I'm up here at Mike's place, and we're going to be painting shotguns and rifles. So I have a shotgun. You have.
I've got both, but
You've got both.
I'll do a rifle at some point, and
Okay.
then we could talk about some things on the rifles.
And I mean, this has been done to death, guys. I think there's a million videos out there, but it seems like everyone wants to watch.
Million.
Yeah, everyone wants to watch it anyway. So we're going to show you the basic areas that you should probably mask off. We'll probably pull Mike's AR into the mix just to show you same thing, and then some basic painting techniques. It really, you can't go wrong with it, because the reality is, if you fuck it up, well, you just paint over it.
Yeah.
So you use the original coat that you messed up as your primer, and you go from there. So there's not really a wrong way of doing it. So we're just going to show you a couple tips, tricks, things like that. There's some things that you should have. One thing that I didn't have, that I didn't bring with me, that was very handy to cut some very fine pieces of tape. And we'll kind of get into it. Coming right up. So basic things that you should mask off. Some things you may not need to mask off that I had to mask off. If you do Velcro on the side of your gun on the receiver for a side saddle, you should definitely cover that. Otherwise, the Velcro is going to be useless.
Yeah, it'll get all gunked up, right?
Yeah. Now, if you have Velcro that's all gunked up and already starting to like get to it, the end of its lifespan because you ran a few classes with it, peel it off and put more shit on there. I mean, it's pretty much common sense.
You could even buy camouflage Velcro.
Ooh.
I think they sell that. I think I've seen it.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, so you could rip that off, put camo Velcro on. But I definitely recommend putting some tape over it. Like, it won't match the rest of your camo pattern, but whatever.
And if everything doesn't match, then.
But I mean, you're gonna put a shotgun card on it anyway, hopefully.
But it has to match on the shotgun card.
Oh, the shotgun card.
I mean,
well,
if everything doesn't match, then I mean, you're gonna die, right? I mean, isn't that like one of the keys to?
No, you just won't get a million views on Instagram.
Oh, gotcha. I thought it was like you immediately just were like going to be done, and they'd find you and kill you.
Yeah, the Instagram police will come.
Exactly. Rubber parts. You can paint them. They don't paint well. Paint will come off. If you give a crap, tape it off. I taped off the butt pad of this because this is one of the Magpul stocks and forends, and it has a very soft, squishy rubber butt pad. So you might want to tape off anything that's rubber. That goes also for like the ergo grips for your AR. Anything like that that's spongy like that, the paint's going to flake and crack off almost immediately.
Yeah.
So paint it, don't paint it, that's up to you.
I actually like the look of it. Like when you paint the rubber, over time it kind of changes and rubs off, and it looks fine. Like, these things are supposed to be working guns, right? Like,
yes.
They don't need to be Instagram perfect all the time.
Yes.
But
just
the rubber...
just as a side note, so the reason why this is even happening, and this thing even looks the way it does, is all Zach Bush's fault.
Yes.
So Zach runs...
1301?
No. What does Zach run? What's
Definitive Training Solutions.
Yes. So he did a demonstration at the muster for Tremis, and he was getting accurate shots at 100 yards on 4 people. Everyone else was too.
Using it as a crowd control type of
it was
shot.
very, very, very cool. So anyway, it kind of got the brain working, and that's why this thing even got pulled out of the safe, because it's been living in the safe for a very, very, very long time.
Yeah, he got me going to the point where I'm like, shit, do I want to make an SBS? Do I want to buy a semi-auto gun?
You shot a few of those. You were digging those things.
I don't shoot shotguns, but
that was pretty cool.
I want,
those
they're
pretty
fun.
Cool.
They're fun guns. But okay, so what about the rest of this? So like, obviously the rubber stuff.
Yep.
But what about the working parts? Because I've never done a shotgun before, and you, I saw you show up, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So when I did this originally, because this already has a coat of paint on there that I did years ago, I did a wonderful job of painting over the bolt as well, which caused huge issues down the road. It got gunky, started messing with the firing pin, like it was a whole thing.
Yeah, paint on the inside.
Yeah, on the inside of the receiver, because the problem is that any kind of oil you use is going to cut through the paint to a certain extent, especially over time, especially against a working surface, and it just turns into glue. So covered over the bolt here, covered over the feed tray there for the shells. On an AR, you would do the same thing. If your AR has really bad tolerances between your upper and your lower, You might even want to think about opening it up and taping it there as well. But definitely against the charging handle, any area where the paint can get into the receiver is not a good thing. And then you paint it over these things.
Oh well, yeah. We were talking about should we? I think they're called control arms. I wish I knew.
so.
I wish I knew the parts of a shotgun better. But my thought was these go inside the action, so I'm not going to paint those.
Right.
The ejection port, cover that up. Feed tray, cover that up. Make sure nothing's going on the inside of the gun. And this is the one where I'm like, I don't know if that'll work, but I'd rather not even chance it.
And then I also did the safety because I know that when I have oiled this thing in the past, I've seen oil come out of the safety area. So somehow that's integral to the crap that's inside of here. So I figured it can't hurt to do that. And then obviously if you have a light on your gun, oh my God, a gun's pointed at you. If you have a light on, obviously you should, cover the lens up. I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're wondering why it's floating here in space,
Ooh.
it's because it's way easier to paint stuff when it's hanging
Yeah.
instead of on a table. We have some table for some fine work too, but yeah, a little tip for you when you're painting stuff: hang it from the basketball hoop that's unused in your driveway, and it makes it a little easier.
And if you still have metal hangers, they're good for nothing else.
Yeah.
They're wonderful for this,
No wire hangers.
except for this.
Yeah, except for this.
The wire hangers work wonderfully because you can hook on the muzzle, you can hook on the M-lock, you can hook on the light. Like, they're fantastic for doing painting work. Or you just get some paracord.
Cool.
But just make sure it's camo paracord, otherwise it may not hold.
Right. It's got to be camo.
It's got to be camo. And it's got to match the camo that you're going to paint your rifle, otherwise.
Well, I mean, it'll match afterwards.
Exactly. All right, so then what we're going to do is we're going to take it down. We're going to, actually, we'll probably show painting the base layer. I mean, you paint it. Because I'm going to hit it with a base layer, probably a darker layer. Now, there's whole things about what you should paint as your base layer. And I know there's a theory behind it. I have no freaking clue. I think it's like if you want to end up light, you start dark. If you want to end up dark, you start light, because what you're doing is you're layering on over what you put down. I just use the same paint for every gun when I start.
My theory is, one, what I use first depends on how long I want the finish to last. Like on guns I don't really care about. They're kind of like knock-around guns, things that aren't like my main fighting guns. I'm just going to spray paint them, like with whatever spray paint.
Right.
Usually the Krylon or the Rust-Oleum or whatever. But I think usually what I would do, and what I'm going to do for my rifle, is start with Alumahide. But we could show that in a bit.
Yeah.
But because that's an epoxy-based paint,
Right.
as opposed to just a latex or whatever. So, those are some decisions to make. But when it comes
who
to
makes that?
Brownells,
Yes.
Brownells makes Alumahide, and it's got a bit of a process to go through. Like you can't do all the painting in the same day, so a little bit more to go through. But as far as colors go, first off, I'm not the guy to ask about colors. Even though I am a graphic designer by trade, I don't see colors well. But my theory is, depending on what part of the country you live in, that should determine your base coat, because the base coat's probably going to be the most prominent thing on your rifle or on your gun,
Right.
because it fills in all the gaps. So, here OD is what I would choose.
Yes.
It seems to give that good contrast between pretty much everything. It works almost all year round, even though there's not a lot of green in the winter. It's dark enough so that it doesn't stand out too much. That combined with the browns and some lighter, like little hits of light tan, I think that's best for this area of the country. But if we lived in Arizona,
Yeah, OD would not make a whole lot of sense.
no, you don't use OD.
A whole lot of dead.
Yeah, desert tan.
A whole lot of dead things,
Coyote.
not living things.
Get all the browns and the tans and
Right.
stuff, and go to town on it. But I think here, especially in where we are, there's a lot of we can get into like how the actual colors come into play and contrasts and stuff when you start getting into the painting. But like the base coat, I think you should determine that based off of the location.
Right.
What your general look is.
Which is basically, I've done OD for everything, and I haven't been unhappy. One lesson I learned with the Alumahide, No matter what can you get, no matter what brand you get, don't be a dipshit and spray it on some cardboard first. And if you're getting an effect you don't want, like a lot of particulate for some reason, don't use that
Don't keep
can.
going.
Because I used the can and got a very odd texture base because something was wrong with that batch of paint. Now, in the end, it's fine. I don't care. And it was the wife's gun, and she's fine with it. But you may be very, very annoyed because if and when you have to actually take spray paint off of something, it is a bitch to get it all off.
That's why you just spray it on again.
Yeah, yeah. So, but test your batches to make sure something's not wrong with it, basically. Yeah. All right, guys. So we're going to go over some of the. He's gonna do some close in as I do some basic painting crap, and then we'll do some other details coming right up. Okay, so when you're painting your gun, one thing you don't want to do is go overboard and wind up getting all in one area, then you get drips. So less is more with that. It takes a little bit longer to do it, but it's not that big of a deal. These things are awesome. You can buy it at any hardware store. They kind of click onto the paint can, so you're not holding it with your finger the entire time. So the way I generally do is I'm just doing slow passes. And if you spread it out enough, what you wind up finding is that you'll get decent coverage. But it does take time. And if you zoom in real close right here, you can kind of see like that drip effect that's right there. And that's from the original coating. I had it really bad right here, and I wound up grabbing it with my hand when I moved it, and then it was... But again, the whole thing is, even if that happens, the worst thing that's going to happen is you just paint over it. It's not the end of the world. So this is basically what you're going to do. Generally, you want to do more than one coat. You don't want to do just one on your base coat. You usually want to go over at least one more time. Now, if you already have paint on it, it doesn't really matter because you basically already have a base coat on it. And if you really care, what you want to do is you want to hit it with some kind of degreaser first. Brake cleaner works really well for that, just to get the oils from your hands off of it. I don't care. It doesn't really matter to me. But if you're looking for a really, really, good finish, that's generally what you're going to want to do, because otherwise what you're going to have is you're going to have spots that just aren't going to take paint, and then they're going to come off on you. But that's basically what you're going to do. So you're going to go over the whole gun like this, try and hit all the different angles. If you have a quad rail, it's a little bit different, because with a quad rail, you kind of got to get into all the little crevices and things if you're going to get full coverage on it anyway. And that's about it. And you just keep on doing that till you have full coverage on it. And remember, less is more with it. The less you put on there, the better off you are in the long term. You don't get those big lumpy spots. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do some stencils. Now these are quick, easy stencils you can do yourself. You can also buy the ones for Primary Arms. These work really well. I have these at home. So as you can see, these are the high-end tactical Daisy brand of stencils for your painting. But you can also buy ones from Primary Arms, which are pretty cool because they're made of vinyl. So they kind of roll around like the circulature of the gun, which is kind of cool. But I have found that over time they don't work as well because they start getting flaky and the paint kind of, as it dries, pulls the plastic up, so it's not quite as effective as first time, but first time they work really, really well. Or if you clean them, that probably would help too. All right, so with Mike's work behind the camera, we're going to just paint in here. So what I'm painting is a slightly darker green color on there. And then when you take the stencil off, you can kind of see the contrast between the two. And then what I would do is, those are like major areas, so I would just basically take small areas and just hit them real quick, just to add some more there. Now, as you can see right here, like this is where the shotgun card is going to go, but you have the metal above and below it that you can catch with it too. And right here, especially if you look here, this is where the cord was wrapped around the light. That's what it was tied up from. So I'm going to use the stencil to kind of make those black lines disappear. And then all you have to do is just flip this bad boy over without doing that, preferably.
We'll just put a cut in there.
Yeah. We'll cut it. And then same thing. So what you're going to do is just set your stencils however you want them. Now, some people, if you kind of look, you can kind of orient them so they're going the same way. And then you'll kind of wrap around and have the same effect. I don't care. But some people do. So you can do that if you'd like. I'm just randomly going to lay them on there and paint them. And again, you want to watch how much you're putting on because you could easily get that ponding effect, and you're going to get big globs of paint, which can eventually, if you care, what'll happen is they'll come off in big chunks, which aren't terribly attractive. Again, if you care, for me, this is a fighting gun, so I really don't care. All this paint's going to have wear spots very soon anyway. And then, so as you go through different colors, we have some other colors here. And this is a lighter green, which I'll be putting on. And then at the end, I'm going to hit it with dark accents because, as Mike pointed out the last time I was here when we were painting rifles, it really does make a difference having those dark accents in there. Like it just kind of brings the whole thing together. Even if I don't necessarily want the dark accents, they're kind of necessary for the paint job, at least for it to be less of a mottled blank of green. That's it.
All right. Well, so we just painted Max's shotgun, and I was painting my my AR today. So a few things just to keep in mind that are some different things that you're going to have to like tape off, keep in mind when you're doing different types of guns. One thing, shotguns don't have muzzle devices. So I have threads on here for a silencer. I don't want to mess with those tolerances. So I'm keeping the whole muzzle device, I'm taping that off. It just won't get painted. The light's the same. You know, I'm making sure to tape off the back end of it here as well. I don't want to get it in the button, mess with any of the workings of it. Sights are a little bit different. Usually we have the flip-up sights, AR sights on a rifle. So what I'm doing is making sure that the back of my sights and the actual posts themselves, those aren't getting paint on them either.
And why is that, Mike?
Well, the reason you want to do that is because you want as much contrast as possible. You don't want them shining. You don't want them, you know, fading out against the background. You want to keep them stock. And then sometimes you even have like white dots or like I have a set of AR sights somewhere that have tritium in them. So you just want to make sure that if you have those types of things, you're not painting over them. Which also brings me to the optic itself. I'm running an LVPO on this one, or LPVO, and there's just more shit that you have to worry about to not paint, like the front lens, the rear lens, some of the adjustment knobs in here. If you want to come in on here, I taped off a good number of these like control surfaces so that I can still tell what brightness level this is at. You know, the rear cap. So just keeping the paint out of places that you don't want it to go. Magazines, these fancy windowed magazines. You want to make sure that you, if you're painting an AR, you can have a magazine in there. It'll create one whole package. But if you're using magazines with windows, you want to tape the windows off. I like to tape off my trigger so that no paint just accidentally gets up into the trigger group, just so, you know, it stays a little bit cleaner. And that's about it. Oh, and the other thing that you want to make sure that you do when you're painting a rifle is you extend the buttstock all the way.
Because otherwise...
Otherwise you get a big spot of unpainted thing when all of a sudden you adjust that buttstock. So extend it out all the way, paint it, and then collapse it to wherever you need it.
So basic differences, like it's like everything else, there's something a little bit different about each, but there's certain key places that you really want to pay attention to. In particular, muzzle device, because that would really suck if your chosen silencer didn't want to seat correctly. Front sight so you can actually see what you're shooting at, and obviously all the little controls on your optic if you have, and they go through red dots too.
Yeah. Oh, one other thing to point out here. Anything that emits a laser, you probably want to tape off as well. I have a Steiner Tor Mini up here. It's just a quick little way to put an IR laser on a gun. Anything with a pick rail it works on. It's meant for pistols, but it works for rifles too. Make sure to tape off the front so that the laser can still come out.
Otherwise, it doesn't do you a lot of good.
Yeah.
Alrighty. All right, guys. So it's just some differences between the two to point out. So guys, so here's another way of painting your gun, and this is using stencils. So this is more like a AOR pattern. It's basically like the Digicamo pattern. And it kind of gives you a more defined effect, so it's not quite so ununiform. And you get more of a definitive effect on it. So there's a bunch of different ways of doing this. No way is really a wrong way. The main thing is paint your damn rifles, because rifles should be painted. But it gives you other options. And same thing, even with this, there's a bunch of different cutouts and patterns for it. There's more that are solid stripes. There's more that are blotches. So you can kind of do whatever your heart desires as far as the painting goes. You know, your creativity is only really limited by your own thoughts put into it. So just another option for you if you want to do something different for the paint job on your rifle or on your shotgun. So there's the finished product, guys. There it is in its, I guess, natural environment. So if that was in the trees, would you see it? Who knows? Maybe we'll do a further shot. And that is the Digicamo stencil job. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a little bit of a further shot. We're going to stand it up in a tree and see if you can see the damn thing. So there's one shotgun standing against the tree. My guess, if there was some more foliage in front of it, you wouldn't even see the damn thing. And then there's Mike's shotgun standing against the tree. But it doesn't look like a gun. That's the point. The outline's broken up enough that it's not an obvious thing to your eye, especially when you look off of camera. And that's the whole point of getting them painted in the first place, guys. It's not to look pretty, it's to make it not look like a gun when you're holding it. All right, guys, so that's it. So these are the shotguns. They have been painted. They're relatively dry. Most of the paint will stay on them and not wind up on my hands, but some of it will wind up on my hands, but that's okay. So hopefully that's helpful. I mean, there's been a million videos on gun painting in general. So this isn't like earth-shattering information. But for whatever reason, there's times when I'm being very whatever and I watch these things. But hopefully you got some information. Maybe you saw something you hadn't thought about before. And you can do it for yourself, because all guns should be painted.
I agree, especially ones that you ever intend to use. Because, man, they sure stick out when you're not at home and when you're not in mom's basement.
Yeah, get out of mom's basement. Get into like
the woods,
the nature,
the backyard,
the backyard.
at least. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, get outside and do the things.
Yeah.
You know, like I always add at the end of these things, what are you doing today to be productive? What have you done today to make yourself better, to make your situation better? You should always be doing something, even something as silly as painting a gun. Or if you subscribe to Mike's channel, which if you don't, you're wrong.
As dick cancer, as they say.
Yes.
As wrong as dick cancer.
Or truck nuts.
Yeah.
And what is your channel, good sir?
At Bulletin. Right on YouTube's.
And it'll be linked below in the comment section for you people that don't know how to spell like I don't. But yeah, we'll be a video coming out where we tried out some smokes and got some interesting results. So make sure that you're looking into that. And then there's also a short up on Mike's channel as well on YouTube.
Yeah.
And
which one
do you like better?
Yeah, make sure you choose which one that you like better, which paint job you think looks better. Here, I'll even give you a closer look.
It looks worse as it gets closer, doesn't it?
Right?
Yes.
Digital.
Digital.
That means it's new.
Look at that. Look at that. It has that nice bright green splashes that drop into the foliage.
It's analog.
Exactly. And analog is better in every way.
You know what analog has in it?
What's that?
Anal.
Hey, third hole is always an option. Anyway, so check it out, guys. Check out his channel. Follow his channel. Go to his website, which is bulletin.net.
Bulletin.net, and the Bulletin community on Facebook, too. You can check it out.
The whole point of his channel is connecting trainers and instructors, which at no cost to you, you can do. And you can also see backgrounds on the trainers. You can see what their credentials are. And if he's putting them up on his site, then they are good to go. Otherwise, he wouldn't be putting them up on his site.
Yeah, we verify every trainer that joins the site. Easiest way to describe it is it's a place for you to go where all trainers and students can come together to find classes.
Because the important part is getting training, guys, because whether it's this or a smoke grenade or an AR, you need to get training.
Right.
It's imperative because you don't know what you don't know. And if you think you're going to rise to the occasion, you won't. So get out there, guys, get training, paint your guns, check out his website, check out his YouTube channel, subscribe, say hi, say, hey, I found you through Max's path. And remember, guys, your path is out there.
Yeah, man.
Go find it.
Rock on.